was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at the age of 12. So yeah, I'd say that my life changed at that moment. Any activity that I had been doing before, for example, playing netball, even just eating a simple meal, this diagnosis meant that it would no longer look the same. I was dropped from the netball team despite me being a talented player. The fact that I had this condition and I had to pause during the games to test myself, and sometimes my sugar levels might be out of range and things like that. They just felt like I was a burden to them. There is no cure for this condition at the moment. So I started asking myself questions: why me? What did I do to cause this? That again was lack of knowledge, because with type 1 diabetes, there is nothing that you've done to actually cause the condition.
Welcome back again to our YouTube channel. Today we're hosting Geraldine Trada. She's a young youth and she is the co-founder of Geraldine Trada Foundation. You're welcome, Miss.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here today.
Wow, how are you feeling today?
Yes, I'm feeling good. The weather's not the best, but I'm happy to be home in Rwanda.
Okay, how is Kigali treating you, and what's the first impression here in Kigali?
It's treating me well. I'm enjoying the food, being with family, spending time with friends. Yeah, it's so good so far.
That's quite interesting. Wow. So Geraldine, could you start by telling us about your journey, you having diabetes at young age, and how did it really shape your future as a person?
Okay. So I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at the age of 12. Prior to my diagnosis, I'd been living with my grandfather who had diabetes, type 2 diabetes. However, I lacked knowledge around the condition itself, the fact that there were different types of diabetes, or even some struggles that he was going through. It's until my diagnosis where my life, I can say, changed. It's a very overwhelming experience, especially as a young person. It's difficult enough as it is. You're in your teenage years. I had started a secondary school at that time. So yeah, I'd say that my life changed at that moment. Any activity that I had been doing before, for example, playing netball, even just eating a simple meal, this diagnosis meant that it would no longer look the same. I had to learn how to take insulin injections, how to count carbohydrates, how to manage living this condition, and even the emotional side of things, like let alone the practical side, like taking care of myself and my health, just the emotional burden. There is no cure for this condition at the moment. So I started asking myself questions: why me? What did I do to cause this? That again was lack of knowledge, because with type 1 diabetes, there is nothing that you've done to actually cause the condition. So you can just see, like, at that time, I had no knowledge and I feared, what the future would hold for me. Yeah.
So, and how did you, as a person, as a young person, I understand it was not an easy journey. But what helped you in your journey? And I just want to know, how did the school treat you? Were they able to really understand the condition that you're going through? And how were they able to support you?
So even in school where I was in a boarding school. You can imagine I had care from my teachers, nurses. I was away from my parents. But actually it didn't really help in that environment, because they themselves lacked awareness and knowledge. I was dropped from the netball team despite me being a talented player. The fact that I had this condition and I had to pause during the games to test myself, and sometimes my sugar levels might be out of range and things like that. They just felt like I was a burden to them. So you can already see how I was being excluded from things that I enjoyed, and that really affected my self-confidence. Just as I said before, my mental health too, and I actually struggled with depression in the beginning stages of this condition. Yeah. But I'm grateful to God that I have an amazing mother who had actually been taking care of my grandfather and was quite knowledgeable about living with someone with diabetes, and she really pushed for the school to make sure that, her child had the same support despite her child living away from home. Without her support, I wouldn't have felt empowered and I wouldn't be the person that I am today.
Wow, that's great, because mothers are very strong.
Mm.
So living with diabetes, I know it's not something easy, but I really want to understand, at what point in your life did you realize that you then have to make an impact in the society?
So in 2019, during a summer trip, my mum actually took me to Mahima Hospital. She knew how I was struggling with the condition before, and it was during this hospital visit that I visited patients, other young people who were living with the same condition. And through that experience, just being with them, sharing stories, I realized that my experience wasn't unique, but then two, I could turn this experience, the opportunities that I had were unique. Like, for example, where I live in the UK, I have access to medicine, I have a support system, I see a diabetes specialist. There are some young people who live in Rwanda who may not easily access those opportunities just because of for example, their financial situation, or there are other obstacles in the way.
Family conditions.
Yeah. So that's where I realized that actually there's something that I could do with this. I could turn my pain into purpose. I could be a role model to them, show them that, I've been through some of the things they're struggling with. And I felt like with what I had, there's something that I could do that could create some sort of impact in their lives.
Wow. That's something very impactful in the society. So Geraldine, the foundation was named after you, right? So can you tell me a little bit about the story behind the name Geraldine Trada Foundation?
Yes, so actually it's my mother who was inspired to name the foundation after myself. As I mentioned before, she'd been the primary caregiver of my grandfather, who was living with type 2 diabetes, and then myself, who was living with type 1 diabetes. So she really had been there through both of our journeys. Unfortunately, my grandfather passed away due to complications of the condition. And similar to me, I feel like she felt that there's something that she could do to turn her story and change that into some sort of impact in other people's lives, and also to empower me to be a role model to other people who may be struggling with the same condition and who share a similar story to me.
There are very many people who don't know actually the difference between type 1 diabetes and also type 2 diabetes. So would you kindly tell us what's the difference?
Yes, so with type 1 diabetes, it's an autoimmune condition where the pancreas doesn't produce any insulin at all. Insulin is a hormone. So that means that, you have to take multiple daily injections of insulin. You have to basically manually do what this pancreas would have to do, which means it requires a lot of attention. With type 2 diabetes, it's a condition where the pancreas produces not enough insulin. It's not enough for the body to regulate its sugar levels. With type 1 diabetes, there's no known cause for sure of the condition. With type 2 diabetes, it's lifestyle choices that can cause this condition. So, if excessive drinking, not enough exercise,
even the environmental changes.
The environment, the nutrition, So those are the main differences. However, there is a lot of lack of awareness around the condition. When people think of diabetes, they think you've eaten too much sugar. They automatically think that, there's something that you've done. There are loads of misconceptions in society.
Which is wrong.
Wrong. And it also doesn't help people who are living with this condition. It demotivates them, and it can lead to poor self-management. It can lead to them feeling excluded, to them not feeling understood.
Yeah. So would you kindly tell me what you do in the Geraldine Trada Foundation? What do you do? And then what are the services that you guys provide? What happens in the camp? Because I also saw that you do the camps like Ibjirinjiro and also Ichizere. I just want to know what happens.
So the Geraldine Trada Foundation educates, supports and empowers young people living with type 1 diabetes. So some of our programs include school awareness programs. We have outreach programs providing medical supplies to people who live in rural communities. We also conduct screening at car-free days because you can't just teach type 1 diabetes alone without also educating about type 2 diabetes and the differences. We, as you mentioned, have camps for young people living with type 1 diabetes and their caregivers. Yeah, those are some of our programs that we have.
Wow, that's so interesting. So what are some of the challenges that you guys faced during the implementation?
So when we started Geraldine Trada Foundation, we were actually sourcing our finances ourselves, so out of pocket, just through friends and family, but mainly out of our own pocket. In 2024, we were able to secure some funding for 2 years, and that's when we were able to introduce more programs. But I'd definitely say lack of funding is one of our main challenges, and with that comes our capacity. I think there's a lot of demand for our services, but because of the capacity we have currently, the demand is greater than what we can offer. Even in terms of just building trust amongst society and other organizations, we're quite a new organization, so I'd say that also is a bit of a challenge. But then through the power of advocacy, media, storytelling, we've come across different organizations that we've collaborated with and local government who have seen our story and the work that we've done so far and have really helped to support with collaborations.
In your own experience, you told me that you had diabetes when you were 12 years. Yeah. So what are some of the misconceptions that people have?
So some of the main misconceptions are the fact that you've eaten too much sugar or you've not done enough exercise. This is the reason why you're diabetic. They believe that, young females like myself may not be able to have children because we have diabetes, or that we're limited in the workplace, or, what we're able to achieve, just to name a few. However, I believe that I'm a living testimony. I've managed to successfully complete my undergraduate degree. I'm now studying my master's. I'd say I'm quite a healthy person. Many people actually see me and don't think that I live with this condition.
So Geraldine, how would you wish the Geraldine Trada Foundation to look alike in 10 years to come?
So in 10 years to come, I see a future where no young person is limited by diabetes. I believe that with the right support, we'll be able to create a hub where people can come and be educated about this condition, caregivers as well as young people living with this condition. I believe that when a young person living with this condition is supported by their family and their community and their peers, their teachers, they're able to feel empowered, to feel like any other child. So I really feel like the Geraldine Trada Foundation in 10 years will be able to make that impact to reach not only just Rwanda but be global in terms of our advocacy, our awareness, our support, because with this condition it's not just insulin you need, it's a whole ecosystem. Emotional support, just to feel empowered, to feel that you are like any other person.
So as we're ending, can you kindly drop the message to someone who is watching this interview and also someone who is living with diabetes, but they feel like their life is ending because you got diabetes when you're having 12 years, now you're 23. So I just want you to give them a message of hope.
My message of hope for any young person who is facing this condition, newly diagnosed, I hope that today, you are able to feel inspired by my journey and that you can have hope that you can overcome this journey, that you're not alone. The challenges that you are going through are challenges that I once faced, but I'm able to be a voice for people that are living with this condition so that we're able to empower each other and we're able to change the stereotypes. We're able to, we're able to fight this condition. Yeah.
So thank you, Geraldine. I'm very happy to hear your long journey. And I know that if anyone is hearing this, they have to really understand that if you're having diabetes, that means it's not the end of the story. It's not the end of life.
Absolutely.
Even if you are having diabetes, but still, life can still move on. You can still make a bright future. So thank you, Geraldine. I hope the future is bright for you. And I want to see Geraldine Trada Foundation in 10 years to come as bright as possible, helping many people, reaching many people in Rwanda and across Africa. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be here.